All right. So I'm not sure what this is going to be exactly, but the long story short on this particular video is periodically I'll get asked like what programs do I use and how do I make some of the draw animation videos. And what's funny about that is I would let people know that I typically use Camtasia, really nice editing software. I'm not trying to do any promotion for Camtasia, but it's a virtually inexpensive, very powerful, very simple, user-friendly video editing tool. So whenever anybody would ask me, like, what programs do you use? I would tell them, oh, I use Camtasia, it's really nice, blah, 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 blah. And I would kind of get like this blank look. It kind of occurred to me, I think what people are asking is if I use one of those drawing animation tools, you know, that you put in the picture and then a virtual arm will come in and draw it for you. I decided that I should probably make a video kind of going over how exactly I do all this stuff. Because I do everything, I would say 99.99999% of these videos, I do freehand. Well, semi-freehand. I do it with my hand. I draw it myself. There's very rarely I'll use oddball images to fill in or anything like that, but generally everything that I put out there, I drew myself. Now, I'm no super artist or anything. I kind of take a semi-old school updated approach on how I do it. And when I say old school, I'm talking about old school animation, where they would draw out the image, the character, or whatever it is that they wanted to animate, and then go over it on a transparency, ink and color and all that stuff. And the way I do it is almost kind of backwards, because what I'll do is I'll typically use PowerPoint. PowerPoint is a very powerful, almost graphic design tool that I use. That's kind of my secret trick. I'm not consistent, and when you're doing animation, you have to stay within a certain space. And of course, I don't have a great memory, so it's very difficult for me to see where my target is without having a reference. So I'll usually pre-draw or map over an image that I want with some of like a poly tool. In fact, I'm going to kind of bring up an example. So it doesn't have to be anything robust. I usually just, clear out the defaults, goodbye, and do a series of duplicate slides. Duplicate, Control A, duplicate, and they usually go up until I've got about 64. I don't know why. That just seems like plenty enough. All right, so what I'll typically do is I'll map something over here in PowerPoint. So I'm just gonna grab an image from, I don't know, try to find a simple image of like, let's type in Apple lip art. Just something hopefully royalty free. I'm just gonna grab this image of an apple, for example. Okay, center it so it's nice and center as much as possible. And then I'll typically use this curve tool or this freeform. If it's rounded, I'll start with this one and then just pick kind of a flat spot. And then I'll just kind of hit all the major curve points. I'll try to get it as rounded as possible. Well, it doesn't have to be perfect. I tell myself I'm going to be drawing over it anyway. This is just a reference to what it is I'm going to draw. So I have that. Get this leaf. Now usually with these edges I'll stop there because it's a little hard. Not difficult, you can do it, but it gets a little bit funky. I'm trying to do it with PowerPoint shapes. Do this little curve there, and then for this one I'll use the poly. Do this. Do a little bit of back and forth for the top of the apple so I know where it starts. And then I do know that I should have probably started over here. Maybe throw in an extra point in there to bring it down just a little bit. All right, it's hard to see it right now, but if I were to delete the image of the apple, I basically have my image of an apple. From there, I'll group it. And then with the group, well, typically I like to do so that way my ratios stay the same as I'll lock the aspect ratios. That way I can adjust the size of it and it won't affect anything. Good enough. Then what I'll do, as it's all grouped together anyway, is I'll change the width of the line to 2.5. or 0.25, sorry. And then I'll use this, what is this one, 15% gray, and then change it into dotted lines. And you can kind of see the picture here, and then what I'll do is I'll take this image, and I shall print it out. When I print it out, I do it on 11 by 17. Default will want me to put it into letter size. So I'm going to change that from letter to tabloid. And of course I don't want this plus 63 pages of blank. So I'll do, it typically will do print selection if I have multiple, or in this case, current slide. And I'll go ahead and print it. Now we can hear the printer working. Beautimus. I heard it print. Go get it. And then there we have it. Now you can like not see it at all, but that's kind of the point. I don't want it to appear on the camera because I want it to look a little bit more natural. So I have it, the camera settings set so that way it'll fade that out just enough that it'll be nearly impossible to see. Sometimes when the shadow of my hand goes over it, you might be able to see it around the edges, but generally, especially when I speed up a video, it'd be almost impossible to find. So now I'm gonna take it over to the whiteboard and draw out this apple. So now I'm gonna do it over here so I can show you what it is that I'm doing. So first, I have my transparency here, right? I get like this stack of a bunch of them, so that way I can switch them out. Because after a while of erasing, I end up kind of buffing out the sheen coating to it so that it doesn't erase very well. It doesn't come in as clean. So I have it kind of set up on here where I can switch it out. But while I'm using it, I have this little clip to hold it up in place. And I actually have some markings that you really can't see, but that'll allow me to make sure that I put everything in a consistent spot. So I have a spot for where the transparency is going to go and a spot where the sheets of paper are going to go. So then I just lay it in there about the same as I normally would. Drop that down, and I got some magnetic little strips that I use to hold down the corners. Alrighty. So with that, I have some black markers, and then I start going over the image. Now again, you really can't see the image that's over here because I have it all faded out so much. However, I can see it, and I'm just going to trace over it. So almost the same pattern that I did when I was mapping it out in the computer. I'm going to follow kind of the same path. Do a little move at the bottom here. This stem I'm just going to make it straight black. Because even if I try to outline it with this thickness, it's not going to really show up anyway. So then, there you go. There's like my first pass of the apple. Now what I'll typically do, because when I'm doing animation, especially with like the stick figures and they're moving, you're going to have some variation of a sort of jitter. So I'll do what I call a trifecta, where I do the same image 3 different times. Again, a little hard to see, but to help keep me on pace, I'll actually like mark a little tick mark here, so that way I can remember. Believe it or not, I actually have trouble remembering how many I put on there. My rule of thumb is if I am unsure, I'll just make another one. So there's sometimes I'll end up having like 4 or 5, but that helps me remember. So then I'll just erase the image, the first image I did. Buff it up real nice. This is a relatively new sheet, so it wasn't too bad. New sheet of transparency, so it wasn't too bad to erase. And then I'll follow the same pattern again. And that helps with consistency. Sometimes I'll change it up if I want some particular variation, but generally I'll just follow the exact same pattern I did before. Or nearly, because I got that little loop part. There. I don't remember if I went down on the other one, but hey, some variation is fine. So that is number 2. 3. And then one more time, same pattern. One's going to be a little bit wonky, off the edges a little bit. Take the stem, finish it off with the leaf. Sometimes I'll go over some faded spots, kind of dot them out so that way they come in a little bit richer. And of course, I got my 2 tick marks. That tells me I did the third one. Get rid of that and erase. All right, so I have my apple, and then if I go over into Camtasia, and I go to the latest recording that I have, get this one out of there. It always defaults to whatever you recorded first. Bring it back, and then I have the video that shows me doing all the drawings. And then my new routine is I'll scale it to 110. That'll help get rid of that top line there. And of course I can go as fast or as slow as I want with this thing. What I'll generally do as part of my rule of thumb is I will, there you go. I'll put it to where the first complete drawing is done. Control F in Camtasia will bring up a kind of a snipping tool. Oop, oh no, poof, got scared there. These are some of the body images, but I'm going to go back probably into my new folder for making whiteboard videos. And I'm going to create a folder called images. Right, and that's where I'm going to store all these. And I'm going to keep the naming convention simple. I'll call it Apple, spell it right, Apple _001. A, because that means that it's the first image of the apple drawn the first time. And so I want the trifecta, the 3, so I'll do ABC. Ooh, there's one thing I forgot to do before I did that. I have the remove white. This is a special configuration that I made and I saved as one of my favorites. I'll have to change the background to white. White. There we go. So that's a little bit of a cleaner image. So I'm actually going to save that over. Otherwise, I'm going to get kind of that bluish hue to it, and I don't want that. So now that's a little bit more of a crisp image. So I'll scoot over slowly. And I got my second one. So, oop, it jumped on me. Back at that thing up. Before I try to erase it. Save, and instead of Apple 1A, it'll be Apple 1B. And then I'll do it again, scooting over to the last one that I did. Save that one, and then it'll be Apple 1C. So then, what I can do, get rid of this bad boy right here, I'll go into the folder that I have. Down the sort just fine. Recent files. So I have Apple 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry. I have Apple 1 ABC. So as you can see, now I have all 3 variations. And if I do, right now my image is set to being with that 6 frames. So if I just do it once, it goes pretty quick, but you can see kind of how it does that wobble. But if I put in a bunch of them, this will help make things look a little bit nicer in the sense that you actually be able to see it. So then there you go. Then it shows this apple. It's kind of got that little warble to it. And that's ultimately how I make that variation. Some people ask me why not use one of those drawing software that will essentially do it for you. And part of my reason for doing it is I like doing it this way. Yes, it takes longer. Yes, it's more tedious, but I love to draw. I also like the idea of just kind of crafting something that's my own, you know? I can say that I put that together from scratch. It's almost like baking a pie, right? You can buy one from the store and that's easy. If you want a pie, just go buy one. But there's something to be said about making stuff on your own. It's kind of the whole IKEA concept. You put more value into something that you made yourself as opposed to just buying. So that's why I do it. I like to do it. If this is a hobby for me, it's not something that I'll do it like for professionally here and there, but generally this is a hobby. This is something I enjoy doing. It's just nice, calming. I compare it to like rock gardens or sand gardens. It slows the world down a little bit, and I create something beautiful out of it. Sometimes not so beautiful, but that's part of the whole art of it. And again, I just enjoy doing it that way. Nothing against any of those softwares. If that works for you, go ahead and do it. I just prefer to do it this way, and this is how I end up doing it. So I don't know if you'll ever want to do it this way. It's a little bit tedious and takes a little bit of investment. You got to get a whiteboard and some transparencies and stuff. But you could even do it on a sheet of paper if you wanted to. One of the points that I started doing this is because then I didn't have to pay for that software to do it. I can take the stuff that I have available to me right now, and I can apply that into something that looks just like it. I also like too how there is a little bit of variation to it, right? Because when you use those softwares, they're almost too clean. This has a little bit of beauty in the chaos where it's inconsistent, and it does have that like little bit of a warble. It just looks a little more natural to me, and that I like. Again, not everyone wants to see that, wants to do that, but that's just the way I like to do it. So I hope that you found this interesting. Maybe even got inspired to do some things. I did by watching some of those old Disney, how they make all the old cartoons and stuff like that. And that's kind of what pushed me into this. And then a little bit of stop motion and whatnot too. So there you have it. I hope you enjoy. And as always, be sure to stay safe, have fun, and rock on.